Emma sat by the small window of the cottage she called home. Her hands moved gently across her growing belly where her baby was growing inside her. She was 6 months pregnant now and felt excited about becoming a mother. The winter evening was cold and dark outside. She had been waiting all day to tell her husband James about her visit to the doctor that morning. When James finally came home, Emma could see something was wrong. His face looked angry and mean. He threw his heavy coat on the old wooden chair without saying hello to her. Emma felt her heart begin to beat faster. She had hoped he would be happy about the baby news, but now she felt scared. James stood in the middle of their small room and looked at Emma with cold, empty eyes. His voice was harsh when he spoke to her. "I don't want this child that you are carrying," he said in a cruel way that made Emma's heart feel broken. "And I don't want you in my life anymore either." Emma could not believe what she was hearing. The man she had loved and trusted for 3 long years was saying terrible things to her. She felt tears begin to fall down her cheeks like rain. Her whole body started to shake, not from the cold, but from fear and sadness. "James, please don't say such things." Emma whispered through her tears. Her voice was so quiet that she could barely hear herself speak. "We can fix whatever is wrong between us. This baby needs to have a father. Please don't leave us alone." But James had already made up his mind. His heart was full of selfishness and cruelty. He began to pack his clothes and belongings into a large bag. Emma watched in horror as he took everything that belonged to him. She begged him to stay and talk about their problems, but he would not listen to her words. "You can find someone else to be the father of that child," James said with no kindness in his voice. "I'm done with this life and done with you." He picked up his bag and walked toward the door. Emma followed him, still crying and pleading with him to change his mind. James opened the door and cold winter air rushed into their warm cottage. Snow was beginning to fall outside, making everything look white and frozen. Without looking back at Emma or saying goodbye, James walked out into the night. He slammed the door so hard that the whole cottage shook. Emma was left standing alone. In the silence, the next morning brought more terrible news for Emma. When she opened her front door, she found a white paper stuck to the wood. It was an eviction notice from the landlord. Emma read the words with growing fear. James had not been paying the rent for their cottage for many months. Now, she had only 3 days to leave or the sheriff would come to make her go. Emma had no money of her own. James had always controlled all their money and never let her have any. She had no family living nearby who could help her. Her parents had died years ago, and she had no brothers or sisters. She felt more alone than she had ever felt in her whole life. With her heart heavy with sadness, Emma began to pack her few belongings. She had only a small cloth bag to carry everything she owned. She packed her one extra dress, the warm shawl her mother had given her, and the few pieces of jewelry she had. Everything else in the cottage belonged to James or came with the rented house. Emma put on her heaviest coat and wrapped her warm shawl round her shoulders. She picked up her small bag and walked out of the cottage that had been her home. She did not know where she would go or what she would do. The cold winter wind blew snow into her face as she walked slowly through the village streets. Most of the houses had warm light glowing from their windows. Emma could see families sitting together, eating dinner and talking. She wished she could be inside one of those warm homes instead of walking alone in the cold. Her feet began to hurt from walking, and her belly felt heavy as darkness came. Emma knew she needed to find somewhere to spend the night. She could not walk any more at the edge of town. She found an old barn that seemed empty. The wooden door was not locked. So she pushed it open and went inside. It was not warm, but at least it blocked the wind and snow. Emma made a bed from old hay that was scattered on the barn floor. She pulled her shawl tight round her body and tried to stay warm. Her stomach was empty because she had not eaten all day, but she had no food and no money to buy any dot in the darkness of the barn. Emma put both her hands on her belly where her baby was growing. She could feel the little one moving inside her. Even though she was scared and alone, she felt love for her unborn child. She spoke quietly to the baby in a soft, gentle voice. "Don't worry. Little one," Emma whispered into the cold night air. "Your mama will find a way for us to survive this somehow. I promise I will take care of you. No matter what happens to us." Outside the barn, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white silence. When the first light of morning came through the cracks in the old barn walls, Emma slowly opened her eyes. Her whole body felt stiff and cold from sleeping on the hard ground. She had barely slept during the long, freezing night. Every sound had made her jump with fear. Now her back ached and her stomach felt empty and sick. Emma was trying to sit up when she saw a shadow in the doorway of the barn. Fear shot through her body like lightning. Someone was standing there, watching her. Emma's heart began to beat very fast. She pulled her thin shawl closer round her body and tried to make herself look smaller. The person in the doorway stepped into the morning light. Emma could see it was a woman with long black hair and dark skin. She was wearing clothes made from animal skins and had colorful beads round her neck. Emma knew right away that this was a Native American woman. Emma had heard many stories about the native people who lived in the forests round the village, but she had never seen one up close before. Emma felt scared because she did not know what the woman wanted. Some people in the village told frightening stories about the native people. They said they were dangerous and could not be trusted. Emma pressed herself against the back wall of the barn and tried not to make any noise. But when Emma looked into the woman's face, she saw something that surprised her. The woman's eyes were not angry or mean. They were soft and full of kindness. The woman's face showed worry and concern, like a mother looking at her child. Emma felt some of her fear begin to go away. The woman spoke in English, but her words sounded careful and slow, like she was thinking about each one before she said it. "My name is Mary," she said in a gentle voice that reminded Emma of her own mother. "I saw you come here last night when the snow was falling. You look like you need help." Emma was so surprised that someone was being kind to her that she could not speak for a moment. She just stared at Mary with wide eyes. No one had offered to help her since James had left her alone. The people in the village had looked at her with judgment when they saw her walking the streets with her small bag. Mary took a small step closer, but she moved slowly so she would not frighten Emma more. "I live near here," Mary continued. "I have been watching this barn because sometimes travelers sleep here when they have nowhere else to go. When I saw you last night, I could tell you were in trouble." Mary explained that she belonged to the local tribe that lived in the forest near the village. Her people had been living in this area for many generations, long before the white settlers came to build the village. Most of her tribe had moved away to other lands, but Mary had stayed because this place was her home. "I lost my own family many years ago," Mary said with sadness in her voice. "Since then, I have lived alone in a small cabin in the woods. When I see someone who is suffering like I have suffered, my heart tells me I must help." Mary looked at Emma's round belly and understood immediately that she was going to have a baby soon. "Come with me," Mary said softly, holding out her hand. "You cannot stay in this cold barn. It is not safe for you or for the child you are carrying." Emma felt torn between fear and hope. She had heard stories from some people in the village about tensions between the white settlers and the Native Americans. Some people said there had been fights and misunderstandings between the two groups. But Mary's warm smile and gentle way of speaking made Emma feel safe. Mary seemed to understand Emma's worry. "I know you may have heard stories that make you afraid of my people," Mary said, "but I promise you that I only want to help. I am a healer in my tribe, and I know how to care for women who are having babies." Emma realized that she had no other choice. She could not stay in the cold barn, and she had nowhere else to go. More than that, something in Mary's kind eyes made Emma feel like she could trust this woman. Mary helped Emma stand up and gather her small bag of belongings. Then she led Emma through the forest on a narrow path that wound between tall trees. The morning air was cold and crisp, but walking helped Emma feel warmer than she had felt all night after walking for about 20 minutes. They came to a small log cabin that sat in a clearing surrounded by pine trees. Smoke was coming from the chimney, which meant there was a warm fire inside. Emma could smell something wonderful cooking, and her empty stomach made a loud noise. Mary opened the wooden door and led Emma inside. The cabin was small but very cozy and warm. There was a stone fireplace with a bright fire crackling inside. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, filling the air with pleasant smells. Colorful blankets were folded neatly on a wooden bench, and everything looked clean and comfortable. "Sit here by the fire," Mary said, pointing to a chair with soft cushions. "You need to get warm." Mary brought Emma a thick wool blanket and wrapped it round her shoulders. Then she ladled hot soup from a pot that was hanging over the fire. The soup was made from vegetables and herbs that Emma had never tasted before, but it was delicious and warming. As Emma ate, she felt strength returning to her tired body. For the first time in many days, she felt truly cared for. Mary sat down across from Emma and watched her eat. "You are with child," Mary said with a smile. "In my tribe, we believe that bringing a new life into the world is a great blessing, not a burden that should be feared." Emma felt tears come to her eyes. But they were not tears of sadness this time. They were tears of relief and gratitude. For so long, she had felt ashamed and afraid about being pregnant and alone. But Mary spoke about her baby as if it was something wonderful and precious. "Why are you helping me?" Emma asked when she had finished eating. Her voice was still weak, but she felt much better. "You don't even know me or what I have done." Mary stood up and began preparing a bed for Emma with soft blankets and pillows. She smiled as she worked. "I am helping you because we are both women who understand what it means to be alone in this world," Mary said. "I know what it feels like to have no family and no one to turn to when life becomes hard." Mary tucked the blankets round Emma as she lay down on the comfortable bed. "But I have learned something important during my years of living alone," Mary continued. "Being alone does not have to mean being lonely. When we help each other, we create a new kind of family." Emma felt safer and more peaceful than she had felt in a very long time. As she closed her eyes to rest, she whispered a quiet thank you to Mary and to whatever force had brought this kind woman into her life. As the days turned into weeks, Emma and Mary spent more and more time together in the warm cabin. At first, Emma had been worried that she was being a burden to Mary. But Mary made it clear that she enjoyed having someone to share her home with. The two women began to feel like family, even though they came from very different worlds. Every morning, Mary would wake up early to tend the fire and prepare breakfast. She taught Emma how to make tea from the dried herbs that hung from the ceiling of the cabin. There were herbs for headaches, herbs for stomach problems, and special herbs that would help Emma stay healthy during her pregnancy. Emma had never learned about these natural medicines before, and she found it fascinating. "My grandmother taught me about these plants when I was a little girl," Mary explained as she showed Emma how to measure the right amount of each herb. "She said that nature provides everything we need if we know where to look, and how to use it properly. Emma was amazed by how much Mary knew about healing and taking care of people. In the village where Emma had lived with James, people went to the doctor when they were sick, and the doctor gave them medicine from bottles. But Mary's way seemed more gentle and natural. In return for all that Mary was teaching her, Emma offered to help Mary with something that had always been difficult for her. Emma had learned to read and write when she was a child, and she could see that Mary wanted to improve her English. Every evening after dinner, Emma would sit with Mary and help her practice reading from the few books that Emma had brought with her. Mary was a quick learner, and she seemed to enjoy the stories in Emma's books. Emma's favorite book was a collection of poems about nature and friendship. When Mary read the poems out loud, her accent made them sound different, but also more beautiful in a way. Words are powerful things, Mary said one night as they were reading together by the fireplace. In my tribe, we believe that words can heal or hurt, just like medicine can heal or hurt. You are teaching me to use English words in a healing way. As Emma's belly grew bigger, Mary paid close attention to how she was feeling. Mary had helped deliver many babies when she lived with her tribe. She knew all the signs that meant a baby was growing healthy and strong. Every few days, Mary would place her experienced hands on Emma's belly and listen carefully. "Your baby will be strong," Mary said one evening in late January. Emma was sitting in her favorite chair by the fire, and Mary was kneeling beside her, with her hands on Emma's round belly. "I can feel the fighting spirit of this little one. The baby kicks like a warrior." Emma smiled and put her own hands next to Mary's. She could feel the baby moving round inside her, and it always made her happy. "I hope the baby will be strong," Emma said. "This child will need to be tough to make it in this world, especially without a father." Mary looked into Emma's eyes with a serious expression. "This baby does not need that cruel man who left you," Mary said firmly. "This child will have something much better. This baby will have two mothers who love her and will protect her always." Emma felt tears of happiness in her eyes when Mary said those words. She had been so worried about raising a child alone. But now she realized she would not be alone at all. As February arrived, Mary began to prepare for the birth of Emma's baby. She gathered special herbs that would help with the pain of childbirth, and others that would help Emma recover afterward. She prepared soft cloths and blankets for the new baby. She even carved a small wooden cradle from a piece of oak wood. Mary made Emma feel safe and supported in ways that James had never done. When Emma had been married to James, he had always made her feel like her problems were not important. But Mary listened to all of Emma's worries and fears, and she always knew the right words to make Emma feel better. On a cold February morning when snow was falling heavily outside, Emma woke up feeling strange. Sharp pains were coming and going in her belly and back. At first she thought maybe she had eaten something that disagreed with her, but then she realized what was happening. The baby was ready to be born. "Mary," Emma called out, trying not to sound too frightened. "I think it is time." Mary had been waiting for this day for weeks, and she was completely prepared. She helped Emma get comfortable and spoke to her in a calm, encouraging voice. "You are brave and strong, Emma," Mary said as she held Emma's hand. "Your child is coming into a world full of love and hope." The labor was long and difficult, lasting many hours. Emma had never experienced pain like this before, and sometimes she felt scared that something might go wrong. But Mary stayed by her side every minute, giving her sips of healing tea and speaking encouraging words. "The baby is almost here," Mary said as the afternoon sun began to set. "Just a little bit more, and you will meet your child." Finally, as the last light of day was fading outside the cabin windows. Emma gave birth to a tiny baby girl. The baby was small but perfectly healthy, with a loud cry that filled the cabin. Mary carefully cleaned the baby and wrapped her in the softest blanket she had made. When Mary placed the tiny infant in Emma's arms for the first time, both women began to cry tears of pure joy. Emma looked down at her daughter's tiny face and felt a love stronger than anything she had ever experienced before. "What will you name her?" Mary asked softly, wiping tears from her own cheeks. Emma looked at the baby, then at Mary, then back at her daughter. "Hope," Emma whispered. "I will call her Hope, because she was born from hope, and she is my hope for the future." Mary smiled the biggest smile Emma had ever seen on her face. "Hope is a beautiful name for a beautiful child," Mary said. "She will grow up knowing that she is loved by two mothers who will always protect her and guide her." Emma looked at Mary with eyes full of gratitude and love. This woman had saved not just her life, but her spirit and her faith in the goodness of people. Baby Hope was 3 months old when the peaceful life that Emma and Mary had built together was suddenly interrupted. It was a warm spring morning, and Emma was sitting outside the cabin nursing Hope in the sunshine. Mary was working in her garden, pulling weeds and checking on the plants she used for making medicine. Emma heard footsteps coming through the forest before she saw who was approaching. At first she thought it might be one of the village women who sometimes came to Mary for healing herbs, but when the person stepped into the clearing round the cabin, Emma's heart stopped beating for a moment. It was James, her cruel husband, who had abandoned her months ago. James looked different than when Emma had last seen him. His clothes were dirty and wrinkled, and his face had a desperate look. Emma could tell right away that he was not doing well. She quickly stood up and held Hope closer to her chest, as if to protect the baby from this man who had caused them so much pain. Well, James said with a mean smile on his face. "So this is where you have been hiding." His eyes moved from Emma to the baby in her arms, and Emma saw something greedy and selfish in his expression. "I heard from people in town that you had the baby. That child belongs to me." Emma felt fear rush through her body, but it was different from the fear she had felt months ago when James had first left her. Back then, she had been weak and scared and alone. Now she was stronger, both in her body and in her heart. Mary had taught her to stand up for herself and to protect what was most important to her. "No," Emma said in a clear, strong voice. "Hope does not belong to you. You abandoned us when I needed you most. You have no right to claim her now." Mary heard the voices and came quickly from her garden. She wiped the dirt from her hands and walked over to stand beside Emma. Mary did not say anything at first, but her presence made Emma feel braver and more confident. James looked at Mary with disgust and hatred. "This is between me and my wife," he said rudely. "This Indian woman has nothing to do with our business." But Emma stepped forward, still holding Hope tightly. "Mary has everything to do with this," Emma said firmly. "She saved my life when you left me to die in the cold. She helped me bring Hope into the world safely. She is more of a parent to this child than you have ever been." James's face turned red with anger. "I don't care what this savage did for you," he said in a voice full of hate. "That baby is mine by law, and I have come to take her. There is a wealthy family in the next county who cannot have children of their own. They are willing to pay good money for a healthy baby." Emma felt sick when she realized what James was planning. He did not want Hope because he loved her or wanted to be her father. He wanted to sell her like she was a piece of property. The thought of her innocent baby being taken away and sold to strangers made Emma feel more angry than she had ever felt in her life. "You will not take my daughter," Emma said, and her voice was like steel. "Hope is not for sale. She is a human being, not something you can buy and sell for money." Mary had been listening to everything, and now she spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm and quiet, but there was strength in it that made James take a step back. "You made your choice months ago when you left Emma alone and pregnant in the winter," Mary said. "You cannot come back now and try to claim rights that you gave up." James became more angry and threatening. He stepped closer to Emma and reached out as if he was going to grab the baby from her arms. "Give me that child right now, or I will take her by force," he said in a dangerous voice. But Mary was wiser than James knew. Over the past few weeks, she had been worried that something like this might happen. She had walked to the village several times to speak with the doctor who had been checking on Emma and Hope. She had also talked to other people in the community about Emma's situation. Mary had asked Emma to write down the whole story of what had happened, how James had abandoned her, how he had left her with no money or food, and how she had nearly died in the cold barn. Emma had written it all down in her careful handwriting, and Mary had taken the papers to show to the village authorities. Now, as James was threatening to take Hope by force, Mary heard more footsteps coming through the forest. She had been expecting this visit, and she had made sure that help would be nearby if it was needed. The village sheriff appeared in the clearing, along with Dr. Wilson, who had been caring for Emma and Hope. Both men looked serious and official. James was surprised to see them, and Emma could tell that he had not expected anyone else to be involved in this situation. "James Miller," the sheriff said in a stern voice. "Dr. Wilson and Mary have told me the whole story of what you did to your wife. Abandoning a pregnant woman with no means of support is against the law in this territory." James tried to argue and make excuses, but the sheriff had already heard all the evidence. The doctor confirmed that Emma had been in very poor health when Mary found her, and that she and the baby could have died without Mary's care. "You have no legal claim to this child," the sheriff told James firmly. "When you abandoned your family, you gave up any rights you might have had as a father. This baby is better off without you." The people in the village had heard Emma's story from Mary and the doctor. Everyone knew how Mary had saved Emma's life and helped deliver the baby. The whole community supported Emma and Mary and baby Hope. James found himself facing not just the law, but the disapproval of everyone who lived in the area. James realized that his plan had failed completely. He had thought he could simply show up and take the baby, but he had not expected Emma to be so strong, or Mary to be so wise and prepared. He had not expected the community to stand up for the two women. Defeated and ashamed, James turned and walked back into the forest. The sheriff and doctor watched him go, making sure he really left. James never came back to that area again. Some people said he left the territory entirely, moving far away where no one knew about what he had done. After James was gone, Emma sank down into a chair, still holding Hope close to her chest. She was shaking, not from fear anymore, but from relief. For months she had been worried that James might try to come back and cause trouble. Now she knew that she and Hope were truly safe. Mary sat down beside Emma and put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He cannot hurt you anymore," Mary said gently. "You and Hope are free to live your lives in peace." Emma looked at Mary with tears of gratitude in her eyes. This wonderful woman had not only saved her life, but had protected her family and made sure that justice was done. Emma finally felt completely free from fear. 2 years had passed since that frightening day when James had tried to take Hope away. Now the cabin in the woods felt like the most peaceful place in the world. Emma and Mary had settled into a comfortable rhythm of daily life that felt natural and right. Every morning they would wake up early to tend the fire and prepare breakfast together, while little Hope played on a soft blanket on the floor. Emma had learned so much from Mary during these 2 years. Mary had taught her how to identify dozens of different healing plants in the forest. Emma could now make teas for headaches, prepare salves for cuts and bruises, and make special drinks for women who were expecting babies. Mary had also shown Emma how to preserve food for the winter months and how to read the signs in nature that told them when storms were coming not in return. Emma continued to help Mary improve her reading and writing skills. They would spend their evenings by the fireplace, reading books together and talking about the stories they contained. Mary particularly loved the books that told stories about friendship and courage, because she said they reminded her of their own lives. Hope was now healthy. A happy 2-year-old who was the joy of both women's lives. She had curly brown hair, like Emma, and bright, curious eyes that always seemed to be looking for something interesting to explore. Hope was learning to speak, and she used words from both English and Mary's native language. Sometimes she would mix the two languages together in ways that made Emma and Mary laugh with delight. The little girl was fearless and adventurous, always wanting to help with whatever the two women were doing. When Emma was preparing herbs for medicine, Hope would sit beside her and pretend to mix her own potions with leaves and water. When Mary was working in the garden, Hope would follow behind her with her own small basket, collecting flowers and pretty stones. As word spread through the village about the kindness and wisdom of the two women, other people began to seek them out. At first, it was just women from the village who came to Mary for her healing remedies. But soon, women who were facing difficult situations began to appear at their door, looking for help and shelter. The first woman who came to them for refuge was named Anne. She was young, probably only 18 years old, and she was running away from a husband who hit her and threatened to hurt her badly, and arrived at the cabin on a rainy night, wet and scared and crying. Emma and Mary welcomed her inside without asking any questions. Emma looked at Anne and remembered exactly how she had felt 2 years ago when she was alone and frightened. "We understand what it feels like to be alone and afraid," Emma told, and as Mary prepared hot soup and dry clothes, "You are safe here. No one will hurt you while you're with us," and stayed with them for several weeks while Mary helped her figure out what to do next eventually, and decided to travel to another territory where she had relatives who could help her start a new life. When she left, she hugged Emma and Mary and told them that they had saved her life. After more women came. There was Susan, whose husband had died and left her with 3 small children and no way to support them. There was Margaret, who was pregnant and had been thrown out of her home by her father when he found out. There was Jane, who had run away from a man who was trying to force her to marry him against her will. Each woman who came to the cabin brought her own story of sadness and trouble, but Emma and Mary welcomed them all. The cabin was small, but somehow there was always room for one more person who needed help. Mary would sleep on the floor so that a frightened woman could have her bed. Emma would share her own clothes with women who had arrived with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Emma and Mary never asked the women to pay them anything for their help. Instead, they simply asked each woman to promise that if she ever met another person who needed help, she would remember the kindness she had received and try to pass it on to someone else. Hope grew up surrounded by all these different women who came and went from the cabin. She learned that there were many different ways to be a woman in the world, and that women could be strong and brave even when they were facing very difficult situations. Hope also learned that helping others was one of the most important things a person could do with their life. One warm afternoon, when Hope was playing outside, Emma found Mary sitting under a tree, teaching Hope how to braid friendship bracelets. Mary had given Hope 2 different colored strings, one red and one blue, and was showing her how to weave them together. See how the 2 different colors come together. Mary was explaining to Hope in her gentle voice, when you braid them like this, they make something that is much more beautiful and much stronger than either color would be by itself. Emma watched this scene and felt her heart fill with happiness and understanding. She realized that Mary was not just teaching Hope how to make bracelets. She was teaching her about life itself. Emma's life with Mary had shown her that the most beautiful and meaningful things in life often came from bringing together things that seemed different on the surface. As the years continued to pass, people in the village and beyond began to know the cabin in the woods as a place of refuge and healing. Women would tell other women about Emma and Mary, and the story of their kindness spread from town to town. The 2 women never sought attention or praise for what they were doing. They simply continued to live their lives with generosity and compassion, helping whoever came to their door. Hope grew up to be a remarkable young woman who embodied all the best qualities of both her mothers. She was compassionate like Emma and wise like Mary. She was brave when she needed to be, but also gentle and kind. When Hope became old enough, she decided to become a teacher in the local school. As a teacher, Hope worked with children from many different backgrounds. There were children whose families had come from different countries, children who spoke different languages at home, and children whose families had very different customs and beliefs. Hope had a special gift for helping all these different children learn from each other and become friends. Many years later, when Hope was a grown woman with children of her own, people would sometimes ask Emma to tell them the story of how she and Mary had met. Emma would always smile when she told this story, and she would end it the same way every time. When James abandoned me, I thought my life was completely over. Emma would say, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. But now I understand that my real life was just beginning. Sometimes we have to lose everything we thought we wanted before we can find everything we actually needed. Mary taught me that the most important things in life are love, kindness, and the connections we make with other people. Those are the things that really matter, and those are the things that last forever. The cabin in the woods continued to be a place of refuge and hope. For many more years, Emma and Mary grew old together, still helping others and still learning from each other every day. Their story became a legend in the area, passed down from mothers to daughters as an example of how love and friendship can overcome even the most difficult circumstances. And Hope, who had grown up surrounded by so much love and wisdom, spent her own life bringing people together and teaching others that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. She never forgot the lesson she had learned from watching her 2 mothers build a life based on compassion, courage, and the belief that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect.